Hey, so on Sunday, we began a new series called My Big Loud Mouth. And in the first sermon in that series, I said that we are going to cover all the things we wish we didn't say. Don't worry, this is only a 4-week series, which is clearly not going to cover all the things we wish we didn't say, at least if you have as big a mouth as I did. We are going to cover some of the big ones. We're going to cover things like I hate you, or times when we have said things that were purposely hurtful. We're going to cover things like oversharing, maybe sharing our story with the wrong person or in the wrong setting and wishing we could take it back. We're going to cover things like gossiping, sharing someone else's story in a way that's inappropriate. But we began this series with something that was maybe a little unexpected. We began with this phrase, everything happens for a reason, or maybe God has a plan for this. And the reason that's unexpected is because that's not the kind of thing that I think we immediately wish we could take back, at least not always. Yet, as we talked about on Sunday, it is the kind of thing that sometimes can create a lot of damage. I think what happens is we're trying to be kind. We're trying to comfort someone in their grief, but often when we say something like, everything happens for a reason, what someone hears is, this happened to me because I deserved this. And what happens is we're pushing them faster than they need to go through to the other side of their grief and their processing. I loved this phrase that Bobby used in the after party when we talked about the sermon. She talked about spiritual bypassing, the way that sometimes our faith and our spirituality can actually enable us or make us think that we can bypass some of the work that we need to do internally in our lives. It can make us think that we can jump through grief, we can jump through processing, we can go straight to the end and just believe that everything's okay. And that's not true. It doesn't matter how spiritual we are, there is still work that needs to be done inside. And in fact, I would say the more spiritual we become, the more connected with God we become, the more we understand the work that needs to be done inside when we grieve or when we hurt. But there's another element to this as well. I think sometimes when we say these things, what we're really doing is we're trying to protect ourselves. Now, I've been in this job for a couple of decades now, and I count one of the great privileges of my life, even a joy really, and I'll talk about that in a second, is this opportunity I've had to journey with people through really difficult moments. Now, that's not something that comes naturally to me. I'm not really good at it. It's hard for me. But I do consider it and honor the fact that I've been able to be there with people through a death of a loved one, or loss of a job, a relationship that just disintegrated and fell apart in difficult ways. And even though that's been hard, even though I don't really think I'm very good at it, I consider it a joy because what it has allowed me to do is allow some of my own illusions about myself to fall. And this is what I really think is happening when we quickly want to go to these phrases sometimes. We know someone who's hurting, and we want to say to them, everything happens for a reason, and we blurt it out because what we're doing is we're protecting this illusion that we have around ourselves, that everything that happens to us can be explained. We'll never have to experience pain that's nonsensical. We'll never have to go through something that we didn't deserve. And I know that we wouldn't say it that way because we know the world doesn't work that way. And yet we have this illusion that we protect around ourselves. And the more privileged we are, the more wealthy we are, the less pain that we've gone through. Some of us, like me, have been very blessed to experience very little suffering and pain in our lives. And we want to protect that. And when we jump to these sayings, when we jump to these conclusions, when we try to rush someone else through their difficult moment, I think a lot of what we're doing is we're trying to protect our own illusions around us. And because of my career, when I've had these opportunities to sit with people, to not give them easy answers, but to just be there, to be silent with them, to sit with them, to touch them, to hold them, to be there in that moment. What's happened is I've had to let go a lot of my illusions. I've had to realize that life does not always make sense. And the way that God works in our lives is not always a straight line from A to B. And so what I've done is I've made this small shift in my language that has been really important to me. I've shifted from talking about God having a reason for the things that happen in my life or our lives to talking about the meaning that God creates with me in the moments that I go through. Because here's the thing, I don't think that God brings pain into your life to teach you something. I don't think that's the way that a loving parent interacts with us. God never inflicts pain on us, but God is there present in our pain to journey with us, to help us learn, to teach us there in that moment what we can take with us coming out of it. And that's a very big difference. To say that God caused me this difficult moment because God wanted to teach me something, or to say that God was present to me in this difficult moment, creating meaning, creating wisdom, teaching me things that I could bring through with me to the other side. And this is actually what I think a lot of these scriptural writers are trying to get at. Paul writes in Romans, and he talks about rejoicing in suffering because suffering brings character and perseverance and hope. And Peter speaks in 1 Peter about rejoicing in suffering because we identify with Christ in his sufferings and then in his glory. It's not about this masochistic desire for pain. It's not about believing that God brings difficult things to us, that God hurts us to teach us a lesson. It's about understanding that when we go through these moments, our illusions fall and we see the world as it really is. We experience the people around us as they really are. We become more in tune with what really is in the world. That suffering is not something that can be avoided. It is something that comes to all of us at some point, even our Christ. And when we see that, when we embrace that, when we stop trying to run and hide and our illusions fall away and we see the world as it really is, there is a joy in that. Because it connects us more deeply to each other. It connects us more deeply to the God who suffers. It connects us more deeply to the God who wants to be in relationship so badly that God is willing to hurt for that. And this is the meaning that we pull out on the other side. It's the wisdom and the learning and everything that God does in us, but it's not what God does to us. And this is a really small but really important shift that happens in our language that then becomes something that shifts in our thinking. We stop spiritual bypassing. We stop trying to use our faith to cut through the grief, to jump through to the other side, and we allow our faith to be what takes us into that internal work that we need to do every time we learn new things, every time our view of the world changes, every time we suffer, and every time some of our most deeply held illusions begin to crumble. But what we get is a more true imagination of ourselves, a more true imagination of the people around us that we love, a more true picture of the divine as God comes to us in the midst of our moments. And even right now, in this moment, all of us are experiencing some level of this. Some of the illusions that we've had around us are crumbling. We have thought that we were untouchable. We thought that the economy was our salvation. And now as some of those things break down, those illusions are falling away. And what we're realizing is what is truly at the heart of what it means to be human. What is truly at the heart of what it means to be in touch with God. What it is that truly sits at the center of what it means to follow the way of Jesus, to care for our neighbors, to love each other as best as we possibly can. In this way, even this can be a gift, not because there's a reason, not because God has done this to us, but because in this moment we create new meaning alongside God. We create new learnings that will shape us and teach us, will build us into the people that we will be coming out on the other side. And there's something for all of us to take away in this season. There's something for all of us to learn in all of these moments that we face every day. Hopefully that gives you something to reflect on this week as you think about the things that you are facing and the people around you right now as you journey with them. Perhaps you can think even about some of the ways that you have used this language in inappropriate ways, and sometimes even the beauty in going back to someone and saying, hey, you know what? When we talked, I told you everything would be okay. And maybe I said that a little bit too soon. Instead, can you share with me again? Can I listen to you again? Can I sit with you in this moment? Even that can be an extraordinary gift when we open ourselves in these ways. We'll be back this Sunday with part 2 in the series. We'd love to see you there. Say hi in the chat. Hit subscribe down below so that you get notified when we go live. And leave us a like and a comment. We'd love to hear from you about the ways that you are processing everything that's happening in your world right now. Have a great week, and we will see you online on Sunday.